Good day, everybody. Dave Walker here, co-founder and CEO of the B to SMB Institute. And I wanted to bring you all today a presentation that's been taking shape over the course, I would say, of the last 3 months, as I've had so many conversations about obviously an incredibly traumatic year and a year of massive change in our customer base, our small business customer base, and a seeking, I guess, that many of us share of, okay, well, now what? Now what do we do with the small business community that are our customers, that number in the millions, with so many different individual stories and collective stories about what's happened in 2020 to them. So with that as a backdrop, I've refined this presentation over the course of the last couple of weeks as I've actually delivered it to a couple of our members and to large meetings groups, both here and over in Europe. And it's gotten a lot of feedback and a lot of input. And as I said, I continue to refine it. So with that, without further ado, let me just kind of launch into, first of all, a quick introduction to anyone who's not familiar with the Institute and this whole notion of what exactly is B to SMB. It was a phrase that I coined back in October 2017 to describe those of us who worked for very large brands that sold to small business, specifically who were challenged, professionals who were challenged to win and keep and grow small business customers at scale. And that really is the key, at a national scale, in the millions of small business customers. So over the course of the last 3.5 years, we've grown substantially. In fact, this year has been our highest growth rate year of any in our history. And it's made up of, our membership is now made up of over 150 brands, a lot of familiar household names on this list. This is just a partial view, some names maybe you haven't heard of, some emergent brands, but all of them united in kind of the common goal of trying to sell to the toughest customer on the planet, and that's small businesses. And they were tough long before 2020. They've been tough forever, and a challenge to reach, a challenge to engage, a challenge to qualify and close, and then a challenge to keep. So there's no question there's a tough sell on the planet. And you couple that with 2020 being the toughest year ever. Let's step back for a minute and think about that. This has been a year in which the closures that we've seen of small business, the loss of small business customers of ours has been legion. And it only, frankly, looks like it's going to get worse. We're going to have a lot more business closures as we go into 2021. It's been tough because so many small businesses have pivoted, have literally had to alter their business and business models to try and effectively survive. So many have gone underground, have just trying to go, frankly, just gone into hibernation, hoping that their cash position can outlast basically what is, in some cases, a complete loss of revenue, if not a substantial loss of revenue. So I don't need to tell you that it's been a tough year, but very specifically, I think that it's left us with the challenge of trying to re-envision who our small business customer is. Now, I've picked the word taxonomy, which is usually a word that's used in scientific explanations. It's really the branch of science that's concerned with the classification, especially of organisms. And I use it as an old biology major simply because of the fact that I think that what's happened in the small business landscape is that there has been a radical reclassification of who our best customer is, small business customer is, of who are an opportunity small business customers. I mean, I think everyone would agree that the old kind of profiles, the old demographics, the old attributes, even the old behaviors are not necessarily an indicator going into 2021 that this is someone that your business should be trying to sell to, talking to, reach, engage, etc. So that's why I really started down this path about 4 weeks ago of really crafting some classifications against small business. And I'll get into that in a minute, but I want to just say that, you know, we're all kind of in this space right now trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And I think that as much as we all are collecting anecdotal information and are collecting kind of information from other sources that, are trying to research or survey at scale with small business. I think we're all still kind of left puzzled with exactly now what? Now what's going to happen with small business, particularly as we seem to be in a logjam in Congress and creating any sort of stimulus or aid to small business. And we're entering a season that so many small businesses are dependent on. Now, like you, I tour almost on a daily basis and discover almost on a daily basis lots and lots of different kind of current or young research, young surveys on that come from everyone from the census to the National Federation of Independent Businesses to global monitors. There's a lot of research that's out there right now, a lot of information that's out there right now, much of which is frankly presented in a relatively traditional way using traditional metrics or historical metrics that really kind of speak to the revenue of small business and where they are, that don't necessarily get into the subtleties of things. There's one that I go to consistently, and just a shout out to one of our most valued members, Alignable. They have done a terrific job across their 5.5 million independent small business members to really map out what they believe, that those small businesses believe is the state of affairs. And so you're hearing directly from literally tens of thousands of small businesses aggregated over weeks and months talking about their road to recovery. So I strongly suggest, if you haven't gone to Alignable and checked out their different monthly survey results and their different quarterly survey results, you really should check those out. And one of the what's clear coming from the October report that they just did, and hopefully 15 seconds are left, is small businesses are clearly coming to the realization that it's really all about consumer confidence. It's not necessarily about getting a new tranche of funding as much as it is getting customers back in their locations, in their businesses. The scary part is that in Q4, according to this latest October report, 42% of SMBs might not make it to 2021. In other words, they believe that the cash coming in will be significantly less than the cash they will be required to lay out to continue to operate their business, that they're upside down. The big categories that are obviously having the biggest hits right now are anything related to arts and entertainment, restaurants taking a huge hit. The October hiring outlook for these small businesses in aggregate is flat, and that's flat to the prior quarter, meaning that there's a minimal holiday surge in employment. And this is when many small businesses are going to obviously do a substantial portion of their annual business in this November, December time period. 67% of SMBs in the survey still feel negatively financially impacted by COVID. I'm actually surprised that number is that low. 14% of small businesses see a positive impact. They may be one of the lucky ones that is in a category that is actually succeeding. The closure outlook, again, to just unpack that a little bit more, if you really kind of look at what the total number of small business closings, this could be, if there are, pick your number, 5 million active small businesses in the US, 8 million, 20 million, 29 million. There's a lot of metrics out there on how many small businesses are actually in the United States. We're looking at literally 10 million plus small businesses that potentially are going to close over the course of the next 3 to 4 months. So if that doesn't rock your world and doesn't leave you with a sense of how dramatically the marketplace is going to be changed, then I don't know, frankly, what would. If you look breaking down what is the effect of coronavirus basically on these small business, you start to see that there's very few businesses that say it's not impacting their business at all. Many are saying that it's really impacting their business. Some very few are saying the impact is over. Maybe they were closed for a time and now they're reopened. Another small segment is saying that the impact is on the decline, but you can clearly see that coronavirus continues to have a massive impact on small businesses. And as you start to really break down the month-to-month progression of the impact, you can see that yes, in many cases, we're heading in the right direction. It's going to be interesting to see what October, November, December really reveal from this next quarterly report that is coming out very soon from Alignable. But to see basically that, yeah, we're starting to, looks like, make some positive impact as many small businesses have reopened, but we're still at extraordinarily high levels. Now, speaking of extraordinarily high levels and a note of optimism, I guess, Accenture, who's one of our latest members in the Institute, in July started and then updated a survey of small businesses to really kind of get a sense as to, and similar to Alignable, what's their state of mind? Where do they think they're going? Where do they think they're headed? What's interesting about this, and this is just a few slides from a very large presentation that Accenture and a bit of research that Accenture has done, that there's a degree of positiveness about the notwithstanding the adversity that small businesses believe their customers are staying loyal. They believe that they can return to pre-COVID sales volumes. They believe that they will, after this crisis is over, arrival of vaccine, whatever is that milestone, that sales will return to normal. So there's at least a hopeful outlook on the part of small businesses, but it's clearly starting to fall into buckets. That there were three segments that were really defined by profitability that came clear in this Accenture research. There were winners. There were people who were in this period seeing a profit increase. There were survivors who basically were kind of treading water, were staying the same. And there were a substantial number of stragglers. There were almost 2/3 of the respondents basically were seeing a profit decrease. And there are some correlations, particularly around digital maturity, that each of these categories had, that winners generally were more digitally inclined, stragglers were less digitally inclined. So that had a big impact on that digital maturity, had a big impact on the successful survival or success at all of a small business that was going through this crisis period. So what in coalescing kind of all of this information, there's certainly a lot more of it out there. I started to think about how I would, as a ex-marketer, how I would basically start to rethink about my target, my small business target. And that's what hopefully this presentation really is all about, is okay, you're the marketer, you're challenged with the winning and the growing of small business customers. How do you really kind of reset the table in figuring out exactly what categories of small business are there now? Not so much about their offering or their history or their demographic. It's really more about their current state in the current crisis and really their forward state. So the first group that I identified was the durables, is those businesses that are actually enjoying success out there. I like to say that they're already good, but they're lucky as well that they had a long-term downturn-proof product or service, or they had a high-demand product or service brought on by the pandemic, or they were able to immediately pivot to fill an immediate need, and that happened to be a big need that they were able to pivot to. That meant that also, though, that it was really minimal adaptation required, even when pivoting. They already had much in place. They already had e-commerce. They were already, to a large measure, working remote. They did not take or need PPP. They actually elevated their investment in marketing, in ops, in training, in adjusting. And the question that seems to be on the durables mind, as you see it borne out in a number of surveys, is how do I take advantage of this period? How do I leverage up actually and expand my business? Then there's the resilient, that group of small businesses that are managing to hang on. They've had just enough, so far at least, in the form of cash reserves or in the form of cost savings or both to offset whatever kind of revenue hits they've seen. They are, I like to say, they're surfing the reopenings. They're basically adjusting to whatever the quarantine measures are that are going on in their particular communities and localities, and they are adjusting accordingly. They have had to adapt, but the adaptations have been doable. Great example is restaurants doing curbside pickup. It's a very doable adjustment that they have made, an adaptation. They're adjusting to demand. They're adding e-commerce. They are working more remotely. Many cases they took PPP if they could get it. They tried to avoid cutting, but more return on investment sensitive now more than ever, obviously, as they really look for cost containment. They're uncertain about their readiness for the next wave, which as of December 1st today, we are certainly deep into whatever number wave you want to attribute this to, but we're definitely peaking at another level. They're asking the question that many of us are asking personally: how do I get back to normal? How do we actually return to the way things used to be? The third group I'll call the vulnerable. The vulnerable are really those businesses that were left out and left behind. Those were the group that the Alignable team identified as having less than 30 days of cash reserves on hand when the pandemic really hit. They have expenses that they can't match, especially rent. They have more likely than not their impending closure, especially in the winter months. These are the 42% of businesses that the Alignable survey identified as likely to be upside down by the end of the year. Their product or their service was effectively, for some period of time, was shut off. The reopenings have not been enough for them to recover. They couldn't or they didn't adjust or adapt or adopt. They were in very many cases left out of PPP. They could get it. There was a disproportionate hit in the left out and left behind in minority and urban businesses, especially. They don't have really much readiness for the next wave because they haven't really changed their underlying business conditions. And they're really asking the fundamental question: where is my lifeline? So then I identified what I'll describe as another category, and that's the emergent. These are actually the businesses that are starting to manifest, starting to see now these new businesses that are forming in the course of this last few months. It's a little bit like the Monty Python scene. I'm not dead yet. They're starting again. They've a failed business that's starting again, or they're starting for the first time. There's a tremendous number of professionals who have been laid off over the course of the last 6 months who are now turning to entrepreneurship, who are starting businesses, either long overdue or their hope of last resort. They're really born into the adversity of this new year. I like to say they're forged in fire. They're focused on new opportunities and new models. They over-index, according to the latest research, on minorities. They're younger, they're female, they're undaunted, but I will tell you they're prudent. They're risk-averse with money. They're risk-ready with time. They kind of recognize the startup mentality that they're going to need to have. And they're asking, how will I restart? Not just restart a business, but restart my life, my career, and my profession. If you map this out in kind of a classic set of quadrants that we've all used at one time or another as marketers in our career, in really describing, hey, up in that upper right-hand quadrant, that's the sweet spot. Those durables are the ones where, in all likelihood, we're going to do the most business over the course of 2021. We're also going to do business in these emergents, maybe not as much, but they're definitely on the upswing. The resilience, probably our best hope with the resilient businesses is that we'll maintain status quo. We won't lose them necessarily, but we won't gain much from them. And then last but not least, the vulnerables, which is, as I said, a huge population. I don't think we can have much hope that in vulnerable businesses, we're going to actually get a lot of new business. But as brands that represent literally millions of these small businesses, are we really going to say, hey, we're just going to ignore that group? We're going to let them go? I don't think so. And I'll explain why. On a macro level basis, and again, this bears out in a lot of the research that's been that I've looked at, is that there's some macro level demands happening across small businesses that really are common, whether they're a solopreneur or whether they're an established business of many years, small, large, in the context of small business, it really doesn't matter. First of all, rapid and expansive digital migration. And it's not just simply digital migration, gee, I should make sure that my website works. It's really about everything to do with digital migration to cloud, addition of e-commerce, capabilities that support operations on a digital basis. That's what I hear over and over again from many of our members, where they're seeing really the most, I guess, activity is around anything that represents that digital migration. There's going to be an immediate need for new revenue channels and the support of new revenue channels, especially e-commerce. And there's also going to be changes to new revenue models in key categories. Think of restaurants, think of healthcare, so many others that really are going to have to completely reinvent their revenue models. There's also something that our members at Oracle NetSuite recognized, that there's a tremendous amount of disruption going on in supply chain, especially a shift to home sourcing. As quarantines and lockdowns and embargoes and tariffs have really become now, frankly, part of everyday life, there's been a shutdown in familiar sourcing and a move into sourcing directly here in the US. And that's going to be something that's going to have long-term consequences. And then keeping up with human capital management. There isn't really any business that I've met over the course of the last 6 months that isn't struggling with the changes brought on by remote working. Small business are no different. So those are some macro level demands that really I think we can all kind of keep in our head as we're thinking about the opportunities that we can unlock in selling to small business. But specifically, what I'm seeing across different pieces of research is that the durables, those I call the durables, are really looking for specific things. They're looking for the ability to expand and extend. They're trying to seize market share. They're looking for extensions of what works. They're looking for resources to meet volume demand. They will add employees. They're looking to build on a foundation. So if you have products and services that really are growth products, growth services, those durables are going to be very much in need of what you're offering, and a great target. The resilience, a little bit different. They're going to try to prioritize and profit. They're kind of going back to school on their own organizations and operations and trying to figure out, are they doing the right things and are doing them most effectively and efficiently. They may be pivoting, usually from their core business, so they're leveraging what they already know. Think of the liquor business that started to make hand sanitizer, but they're looking to pivot. They're looking for ways to save money. Their resources that they're looking for will support what they believe is new demand. They will keep or right size employees, but will rehire, and they're looking for bridges. They're not looking for revolutions. They're just looking for ways to kind of get to the next month, the next quarter, the next year. The vulnerables really are in that unenviable position of trying to outrun and outlast this pandemic. They are the ones who are hunkered down as much as they can be. They're cutting costs aggressively. They have very narrow investments. They're mostly jerry-rigging their necessities. They have let go 50% plus of their employees. They're very cautious on rehires. They're looking for what I call gas stations and escape routes. In other words, they're looking for some sort of rescue from the condition that they're in, either from a federal level or from a state level or from a local level. They're the ones who really, frankly, need the most amount of help. And then lastly, the emergence, what I see taking shape in the form of demands, and this was particularly drawn out well in a Kauffman Foundation bit of research that I saw, that these startup founders, these people who are restarting businesses, who are looking to reset and renew, they are making very detailed plans. They're learning lessons from what they've seen either in their prior failure, or they're bringing their professional big business skills to the small business they want to start, meaning they're carefully researching their needs. They're going to hire conservatively. They're looking for low overhead, particularly locations. We have an example here in Chicago where a number of landlords downtown are offering restaurant owners the opportunity to come in rent-free for a co-ownership stake in a restaurant. Interesting model, basically, that we're starting to see take shape, see how successful it is. These are folks who need capital, but they also need abatement or supplier support to really get off the ground. They need that fresh start that potentially your business can offer them. So with that, let's talk a little bit about finding new SMB customers and wrap this up. The idea of trying to find new prospects in the context of a utterly disruptive small business marketplace. Let's kind of go back old school and do some really simple things right off the bat. Let's first and foremost pick the winners, and those would be the durables. Those in the categories basically that are not just managing to survive this pandemic, but actually evidence suggests that they're thriving. So businesses in any form of cleaning, delivery, food services, grocery, home improvement, landscaping, yard care, furniture, home fitness, telehealth, home office equipment, IT support. Those are all categories, and there are more that are clearly seeing growth over the course of the last 6 to 9 months. Those are the winners. Follow demand. Another old school concept is basically, hey, let's look at those areas where we know demand has been elevated significantly. So if you can provide any form of support or product or service that helps enable remote work, or that helps enable satellite or home offices, that offers cybersecurity, that offers delivery, that helps in home sourcing, that helps in in-home fulfillment, that helps migrate to the cloud, that provides a backbone of digital transformation, that allows for a shift to contractors as part of the labor force away from full-time employees or even part-time employees. Those are all demands that there's clear evidence that those are emerging as the most important demands across small businesses as we go into 2021. Something that I think is important that all of us need to do on a daily basis is suspend our use of profile demographics and many of our kind of targeting approaches to try and capture or profile the ideal customer. Let's look at moments of need. Let's look at the hand raiser behavior that really small businesses demonstrate in the form of the search topics that they're going after. Let's look at finding those successful businesses based on their job listing volume or their shipping volume. They're in a new or a relocation. They've expanded their digital footprint significantly. They've gotten a recent capital infusion, a loan of some sort. These are transition triggers that we can all kind of think through. I like the idea of just getting a group together of your marketing team, your sales team, get some wine, do some brainstorming, and you can come up with lots and lots of moments of need that your small business customers will be signaling to you. Partner up. One of the great benefits of the Institute and Institute membership is really the ability to connect with other brands, non-competitors in this space who are all in the same boat as you, trying to figure out how to sell to small business and partner up with them based on demand. If you have a product or service that really accelerates, the demand for it accelerates when a small business gets a new location. Well, guess who knows that better than anyone else? It's Pitney Bowes, one of our newest members. Their change of address data is tremendously informative in providing really a backdrop for what small businesses are moving and where they're moving to. Work with our partner Indeed in really looking at new hiring volume. Look at incorporation if you're looking for those emergents with our partner LegalZoom. Look at shipping volume with ShipStation or UPS. Look at e-commerce adoption through Shopify. Look at loans and capital through our partners Lendio, Cabbage. Look for what kind of price quote and price quote demand is going on through our partners at business.com. Look at purchases, particularly in B2B offerings at Alibaba.com. And then, frankly, just look at marketplace rankings and size of small businesses on Amazon, a great back check to see whether or not a small business falls into the category of emergent or durable or resilient or vulnerable. I'm a big believer in social selling. If you have not really embraced it yet or understand what it is, it's a very simple method of developing and deepening professional relationships to advance your selling opportunities. It's about getting the buyer to know you, like you, trust you. Those are value offerings that we all have to embrace as we attempt to help and save small businesses. If you want to learn a lot about the ins and outs of social selling, by all means, check out from the arguably the granddaddy of social selling, John Ferrara, the founder and CEO of Nimble, gave a terrific presentation during our Best SMB conference on why social selling matters more than ever. So strongly suggest that you check that out if you want to learn more about it. But think about your small business customer and how much they need to trust you right now. They need a partner they can talk to. They need a partner that understands what they're going through. And that's how social selling can really, frankly, help you create that great relationship. Because frankly, when it comes to B2B sales these days, it's clear that those who are applying social selling techniques are the winners. So whether it's content, whether it's advice, whether it's insights, whatever it is, you can see very, very clearly that social selling absolutely improves selling results. And I would argue, like John Ferrara, now more than ever. LinkedIn is still, even amongst small businesses, is still the number one place to actually do social selling, but followed not far behind by Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Instagram is emerging. Google Plus has been there for a while, but these are the platforms that you can pay attention to really develop your social selling skills across your marketing organization, across your sales organization, directly with small businesses. I think it's important to think local. Now, those of you who've known me for years know that I've always been a big, big proponent of thinking locally when it comes to marketing. If you look at basically a simple map that shows where are the hot spots of declines and increases in small business activity, it's very, very clear that what had been a relatively homogeneous map of small business distribution across the US now looks like Swiss cheese. And if you're not figuring out ways to be locally responsive, chances are you are wasting a lot of dollars either going to places where you really shouldn't bother to go because they're in a hotspot, they're not recovered in any shape or form yet, or you're missing opportunities in areas where there either hasn't been as much of a hit or there's a recovery that's full on and responsive. So we're going to talk a lot about this localization, by the way, at our Forward conference, the end of January, on how to really do it. And then last but not least, I'll talk about finding your cause. Now, we did a whole event back in September called Small Biz Aid, where we really featured and highlighted 9 different brands who've done a terrific job of really giving as good as they're getting. Study those programs, study those presentations from that event, from Cabbage and GoDaddy and Oracle NetSuite. Emphasize diversity, embrace diversity, a diverse recovery, educate your community, do it for free, your small business community, be prescriptive, disperse your impact, go local, help those areas that are particularly hard hit when they're hard hit, and apply your social selling skills as you work with SMB advocates and engage influencers. As many of you know, we've launched our advocacy council at the Institute this year. We felt the need to educate, frankly, our member community on what small business advocacy at a government level, at a local level, policy level, what does it look like? How does it operate? How do you get engaged? How do we get engaged with it? So you'll be seeing a lot more from that group over the course of the next few months in really helping us all get better at being good advocates on behalf of small business. So that's it. Now, hopefully I've given you a snapshot of, what a way of looking at the categories of small business, another way of looking at how you really construct your marketing strategy for 2021 and really beyond. How do you take into account all that's happened this year? And like the post that I did a few weeks back that just got an amazing amount of feedback and comments on it, I welcome them. Please email me at dave@b2smbi.com. Welcome your feedback on this. Let's keep this dialogue going. I'm sure there's lots and lots of different ideas out there on how we really construct our sales and marketing plans in 2021, even our product development plans. Who do we go after? What do we develop? And hopefully this provides a starting point, something to push and pull against. Thanks very much for listening to this, and I look forward to seeing you soon.